All right, so we're looking at the Bitcoin chart, and this particular count still takes into consideration that, the previous large move was a wave three, but it also takes into consideration that we may have seen wave four of wave five of wave three, and also wave five itself. So that means that basically a break of this low, which we broke early on here at about 66,000, we already broke that. So for me, this is a very complex type of scenario because it's almost like you've got a double top going on. So therefore, to keep the bearish count in play is a bit of a hard, tricky one if you're looking at a double top scenario because on one hand you've got the double top forming, but why? How? So I think that it's kind of like we had a wave one and A, B, C, D, and this is the E, right? Now, I've been sitting back and just watching rather than taking action because after you put out a bunch of ideas and you have a bullish view, a bearish view, and then you just need to sit back and watch. To continue to post ideas is just to confuse, right? And for me, I think we're at one of those points in time where you need to kind of just be aware of what you're seeing and understand that it's not clear. In this particular case, the move up for the latest move, if it was going to be longer, I reckon it should have just continued higher straight away. But it stopped right here. And I find this interesting because I think that there's a good chance that this is a wave E of a wave two, right? And I put the brakes on everything, including VRA and other cryptos I'm looking at. They all kind of point to the same thing, is that we could be seeing a top, but there's a problem. Although we've seen one piece of confirmation, we need to see another piece of confirmation, and that is this entire move retraced down to the lows, right? We need to break the bottom of this entire move for that to be a proper confirmation of a break of the start of wave E. If this breaks below this level, you could almost say with a level of certainty that it'll continue lower from here, right? It'll be a true head and shoulders pattern because we would have had a shoulder, a head, and another shoulder, right? Even though this looked like a mini head and shoulders, obviously it developed and it took a bit more time. So at this point in time, I'm not going to jump the gun and say the bull case is right or the bear case is right. Instead, I'm going to let the market speak for itself. Um, I believe that if it does break this low, we will go lower and we'll probably have completed the entire move up since I posted that long idea or just after it, right? So forget about all that for now. Let's just wait and see what the price action does from this point on. And then I'll quite happily start posting more ideas on, trade ideas and, what to expect. But for now, I see no reason to rush in and get all antsy and, be expecting any kind of particular move because if it's not happening, it's not happening. You don't want to try and front run a market that is in this type of corrective phase where it could quite easily break in either direction, right? It could. I mean, Bitcoin is well known for breaking higher. So a confirmation of this break would kind of tell me, you know what, it's kind of run out of steam, right? And if it's run out of steam and it hasn't done it in a very, fast kind of manner, right? You've got to kind of look at it this way, right? If you go to, let's say we go to the daily chart, right? take away all the labels. Take a look at what this top looks like here. Just have a look at this top here for a moment, right? And tell me, does that, oops, hang on. Does that look like an up and down move? I mean, this one looked like an up and down move, but it wasn't really. A top, like as in a sharp up and down. So these tops do take time to turn around, right? They do take time. Okay, so whilst we're here, we are also looking at the moving averages. The moving averages kind of also suggest that potentially, yes, we have just crossed over 200 over 1000 on a daily, you know, when we took basically when this whole move started. So that right there, how do you interpret that, right? How do you interpret that? Now, you don't have any back data to really run that against on this chart, but what if we go to the BLX, right? We go to the BLX, we've had crossovers before. Crossovers don't always mean bullish on any chart, but Bitcoin is especially special, right? Crossovers don't necessarily always mean what you think they're going to mean. They're only a tool to just check out if there's any points of support and resistance. That's my opinion, right? Support and resistance, because you could quite easily turn down from a cross, right? I don't think that that's unusual to turn down from a cross. I don't believe it's unusual for you to see a twirling of the crosses. That's I've seen that many times. In fact, if you go, let's go back to the BTC chart for a moment. If you go back to the 4 hour, right? Okay, this high had a cross on the 4 hour. It went above and it came back down beneath it, right? Substantial move, but still, it did prove something here that you do have a turn, but it didn't follow through completely, right? It did form a top, right? Where we are now is basically that at that point where, we did cross over and we are kind of at that point where it could turn around and break down below it, right? If you go back to this area here, what did that look like, right? You had a break of the 200 and the 1000 period moving average, just a straightforward, simple moving average, right? You went above it. Now, at this point, the 1000 period is just moving to the side, but the 200 is more active. It went up and then came back down and eventually broke it, right? So at this point in time, you're not really going to be paying attention much to this indicator unless you're just completely bullish and you just want to keep going to the moon. But when it does finally turn, it comes back to break it, right? So the 1000 period is moving sideways. At this point in time, since this slowdown here, it's not moving sideways, but it's, you just can't tell if that's going to turn around and break it. You can't. There's no way, right? In fact, this would be a good bullish sign, and you'd probably get the technicals that say buy, buy, buy. Right? If you go to the technicals on TradingView, it's a buy. So is that really the best way to know if you should get into a trade? Well, possibly, but you could be buying at the top, it resting on that 200 period moving average, kind of suggesting that, yeah, it might have bounced off it for a period of time, but so far hasn't broken any tops to suggest that it's continuing higher. And just another thing to compare on this as well is when it starts to lean on this period, like 200 period, there's a little bit of a bounce afterwards and comes back down, right? And when it starts to lean on this a little bit, it eventually comes back down to break it, right? If you're in a fully proper uptrend, you don't touch the 200 period. You only break it once you go near it. You only touch it, break it when you go near it. When you're in a full uptrend, you don't really break it until you go near it, right? Doesn't mean you can't bounce off it, but you go near it, you're going to break it soon. When you're on a full uptrend, you don't go anywhere near it. Full uptrend, don't go anywhere near it. Full uptrend, don't go anywhere near it, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the trend won't continue, but that's where the waves come in. That's where the waves come in, right? If there's some kind of logic behind the whole move, well, you might ignore that completely if you don't care about the waves. But then you might get that point in time where it actually breaks it and doesn't stop going down, right? And I think that's the difference between uptrends and downtrends, is that moving averages can definitely make you feel like, a bit of comfort, because so far all you know is that when it breaks it, it bounces back, breaks it, bounces back, whatever. But once it starts to lean into it, I think you got to pay more attention. And I think that if this is a wave C, right, because of the rest of the wave count since 2017 suggests that it is a wave, uh, wave C of a wave D, then this is probably due to break through that support level, right? Um, is this going to break the all-time high, the one set recently? I would say in most cases, no. I would say typically, given the structure here, I would say no. But if it did, um, then it's just one of those final moves where it does create a new high and probably comes back down and tops out on that one. Once again, that level to watch is 60,757. Yeah, I do believe we're either at a top or we're close to a top. So I think probably a little bit of patience is needed for this to sort of work itself out. Tops don't always go up and down like this. Sometimes they do flail a little bit, right, before they go down. They don't always go up and down, straight five up, straight five down, because one saying that always sticks in my head is like market turns, it's like a car when it slows down to take the corner, it slows down before taking off, right? That doesn't always happen, but I believe it's true because you got to think about it. Markets are like balancing forces of buyers and sellers, right? And it doesn't always happen in a straight line. Sometimes the buying forces get weaker until eventually the selling forces take over, right? Now, the only thing I don't like about this particular pattern is that it did kind of break that mold a little. So there is a chance we could pop above, given this structure of 1, 2, 3, is that really a 4? Is that really, sorry, a 5 of 3? And then is that really a 4 and a 5? Um, you know, those are not easy to tell. I would say yes, it is, but I wouldn't short it, right? I'd wait for a confirmation. If it did break it and then we reversed completely and then broke that particular line there, I would definitely take that as a sign. But once that happens, though, you need to be really careful of the the strength of that downward movement to the point of, well, how are you going to trade that, right? So those are the type of things that I don't think you should get too worried about, because I'll be covering it when I see it. But these are the types of things that I would look out for. Even though you could have the best wave count in the world, there might have been a subdivision you missed. And that's the thing about waves, especially 5 wave moves. You can try and be certain that you've counted every subdivision, um, but sometimes wave Ds expand to the point where they look impulsive. And I tend to be very weary of those, especially when you see this type of insane movement. All right, you might say that that looks complete, but that might not be true. And one last thing I'll mention on that is that, let's just say that we did have a wave 3 completed up here, right? Would you say that that's a complete 5 wave move when you have this type of thing going on, right? You got to use your logic, right? Um, yeah, that's all I can say for now. I don't want to overthink this. I'm just observing for now, right? But I'm just giving you my thoughts here on what this could be and why it's looking this way, and why it's touching this 200 period moving average. Is because it might be close to topping, but it might not quite be done yet. And I think that once we come back and retest this 200 period moving average, I think that's when we'll top. Thanks for watching.